What is the gist of what we are dealing with, Nkosazana, from what the Premier had to say? What are the reasons we are seeing the numbers that we are seeing and the hospitalizations that we are seeing?
Yes, Tula. So basically the provincial government is saying that in the next 2 weeks it will be very difficult for the province as the province is set to become the epicenter of the coronavirus in South Africa amid the second wave. Now, what he also mentioned was that in the last 7 days, admission numbers have doubled everywhere. He says that from about 100 patients being admitted, we are now seeing above 200 patients across the hospitals in the province. And he says the reason now for what we are seeing nowadays is that the largest number of Rage Festival party goers were actually coming from the city of Tshwane, and he says the government then anticipated a major COVID-19 hit because of this, and that the government has since been gearing up for a difficult time since then. But he also says the general just lack of adherence to COVID-19 safety protocols by citizens during the festive season is another reason why we are seeing a spike in the number of COVID-19 infections. Now, he says Gauteng is now where it was at the peak of the first wave, and in fact it is now surpassing that peak. And regarding the videos and pictures of patients at the Steve Biko Academic Hospital that we saw circulating social media this week, he says those 90 patients were actually coming from Garankuwa, and they arrived here at the same time. And that is why the hospital then made a decision in line with COVID-19 guidelines to erect a fever tents, which are behind me here to my left, as part of the provincial government's response to the second wave, and that the patients that have been placed here in and outside these fever tents have been tested, but are still awaiting their test results before they are actually admitted into the hospital. But let's take a listen to what Gauteng Premier David Makura had to say during the briefing.
Just in the last 7 days, the admission numbers in our hospitals have doubled everywhere in the last 7 days. They have doubled everywhere. Whereas we would have had towards the end of December, the numbers ranging from 100 patients, now they are ranging above 200 patients in various facilities. A large number of people arriving at the same time, that's the video that's circulating, which led to the managers at this hospital, the CEO and her team, making a decision in line with the regulations and guidelines of how the province manages numbers, decided that when we have suddenly had so many people arriving, the number of patients were not as we have had before. Suddenly a lot of people arrived at once. They had to make a plan. And fever tents, that's what you see here. They're called fever tents. Fever tents were part of our response very well. They helped a lot during the response to the first wave, especially at the peak of the first wave.
So that's the Gauteng Premier there, Nkosazana, talking a bit earlier on about where we are in terms of the hospital admissions, as well as explaining those tents that we've been seeing in pictures and videos doing the rounds on social media, particularly from Steve Biko Academic Hospital. He was also fielding questions, wasn't he, about the issue of the government's response to the situation that we are in now and the situation that we anticipate in Gauteng in the coming few weeks. What did he have to say about the extra bed space that they have to make available, including those filled hospitals? Where do we stand on that?
Well, the Premier was just basically saying that government will be working closely with law enforcement authorities as well as healthcare workers across the province to try and curb the spread of the virus. But most importantly, he was appealing to citizens in the province to just help government and work with government by adhering to the basic COVID-19 safety protocols. He says funerals are particularly a big problem in the province. He's urging people to adhere to that limit of 50 people. But he did also promise that they would will be adding 500 more beds to the Nasrec Field Hospital. In fact, he said they will be adding more beds to hospitals across the province to make sure that people are not turned away when they are seeking immediate care for COVID-19.
All right, watching that story there for us, ENCA's Nkosazana Dambuza live for us from the Steve Biko Academic Hospital there, where the provincial government has been leading that briefing by the Premier, David Makura, who also signalled that he will be holding a media briefing tomorrow.